Before the game industry became oversaturated with sandbox games, and before Grand Theft Auto got its huge popularity, there was a game that was already an open world driving game before GTA even was a 3D game. The widely fan popular game Driver. The game has released on PlayStation on 25 June in 1999, and it set the stepping stone for many games in the future. Driver had a huge impact on Sony's first CD game system. Where the PlayStation 1 had some racing games like Need for Speed, Ridge Racer and Gran Turismo, Driver did something a bit different and focused more on Hollywood star car chasing and not trying to be a driving simulator like Gran Turismo or an arcade-like experience like Need for Speed. But the biggest difference from those games was that Driver could be played in an open city, giving the player freedom so the player can unleash their inner lust for exploration and destruction. But just a year later Driver got its sequel, Driver 2 – The Wheelman is Back, and much more inferior sequel. 3 years later Rockstar delivered their first 3D open GTA, Grand Theft Auto 3. A game that took everything from Driver and made it better and more polished. Rockstar started breathing at Driver's developers' neck with its sequels. And with the time Driver games were more compared to the GTA games and not the other way around. The newer Driver sequels was thrown from studio to studio, and after almost losing its identity completely, the Driver games shifted from an open world game style where you can explore the game on your feet to just driving. Welcome to the RBG show, where we look at the rise and downfall of Driver. Reflection was a game studio from Newcastle, England. A studio that started making games since 1986. The studio made many smaller hits, but striking gold with the game Shadow of the Beast in 1989. The game was praised for its atmosphere and graphics. It was a simple sprite-based game for the Amiga. The studio was releasing mostly 2D games until 1995, where the studio jumped into 3D, with the game Destruction Derby. The game was very well received, with some reviews pointing out that's the pinnacle of graphics. I don't even wanna make a comparison video with the newer games, but hey, in 10 years the game we play now are also gonna be outdated. The game was released on PC and almost every home console. Destruction Derby allowed the player to cause mayhem, fighting with the cars in huge rings designed for crashing and race on many different tracks. It had a very robust physics engine that allowed for very immersive driving experience for the time. For the next years coming, Reflection stayed in the racing genre, releasing Destruction Derby 2 and Thunder Truck Rally, and I have many fond memories of Destruction Derby 2, especially like the arena modes. Reflection got acquired from GT Interactive, a huge game in the 90s. The publisher was releasing games like Doom, Duke Nukem, Quake, some of the biggest FPS titles back in the day. The head of Reflection was a huge fan of car racing games, and he wanted to take the mayhem that he created in Destruction Derby with its polished engine and driving mechanics into the streets. So you can endanger innocent civilians, what wasn't possible in Driver 2, and I tried to do it desperately. They wanted to create a game that would capture the adrenaline that we see on the Hollywood big screens with high-speed car chases through the city and bring those intense moments on our small TVs. In 1999, Interactive Studio released the most technologically advanced game yet, Driver, or known as the Driver You Are the Wheelman in North America. A game that I played a bit on the PlayStation, but the first time I actually beat it was on my iPhone. Around that time, another British developer caught their attention, a studio named DMA Designs, with its badass attitude game Grand Theft Auto, a game that would later destroy the Driver series in comparison to sales and popularity. The first GTA was a top-down game with the possibility to steal cars and get into high-speed chases with the cops. Still, Reflections had delivered a very good critically acclaimed game. Driver 1 sold alone on the PlayStation 6 million units, what was a big deal back in the day. Driver 1 follows the story of John Tanner, an undercover cop who becomes the villain for a group of gangsters. In the game you will visit various places like New York, Los Angeles and Miami. the game made full usage of driver mechanics, so you will perform various tricks like J-turns and 180s. The game features various modes like survival, where you need to survive hordes of cops pursuing you, a game mode that made so much fun it was hard to describe, and a director mode, which allows you to change the camera after you finish a mission to give you a special Hollywood flavor. Driver made its way also on the PC and even later on the iPhone with some improvements. The driver was even ported on the Game Boy, and the game was very well received, as it tried to capture the style of the Big Brother counterpart. But the huge success of Driver didn't save the problems that were inside of GT Interactive, ending that Reflections and GT Interactive became acquired by Infographic Entertainment, which through the years got many studios. One of them being Atari, what rebranded itself in early 2000s. The studio produced the last PlayStation 1 Driver game, Driver 2, or Driver Devilman is Back in North America. Even Driver 2 made many improvements from the first sequel. There were many things that the critics and fans complained. This time they looked at the DMA GTA games and took an approach to be able to explore the city on foot, and many praised those segments, but problem was that those segments slowed the game and were clunky to control. Many say that Driver 2 was a game too ambitious for the hardware for which it was designed. Where I don't remember that the game had some FPS drops, I'd enjoyed the sequel the most. I had really fun memories of driving around and trying to find the secret cars and just to explore the cities. This time around, the game had also a two-player mode. The cities were also bigger and more complex structured. You could explore Chicago, Havana, Los Angeles, Rio de Janeiro. But the imbalanced difficulty were just some of the things that bothered the fanbase. The story followed Tanner and a former cop, Officer Tobias Jones. The plot was resolving about Tanner and his partner wanted to stop a criminal underground war. In 2002, Driver got ported on the Game Boy Advance. The game was very well received as it was built on a game engine that could imitate 3D graphics. And the port has even a possibility to be played with 4 other players with a link cable, which sounds really cool. Sadly, I didn't play the game. After that, the studios take a break from the Driver series and made the game Stuntman. And my god, Stuntman is a game that I don't recommend at all. Where you, as the title says, take a role of a stuntman and perform various stunts. The game took mechanics of Driver, but the critical reviews was mixed. Mostly because the game had a Punisher difficulty, and I raged so many times when I played the game. In the game was also a small teaser for the next Driver game, what made the fanbase very curious about how Driver 3 is gonna look like. But before Driver 3 there was a game released also with 3 in their title, no other than a worldwide massive hit from DMA, or today known as Rockstar North, Grand Theft Auto 3. A game that took some things from the Driver games but improved in every aspect. Even adding guns, the car chases were more enjoyable, the shooting was very well received, and it had an amazing soundtrack. GTA 3 became everything the Driver wanted to be and much more. It could be said that GTA 3 was a blueprint for every open world sandbox game for the future. Rockstar started even publicly mocking Driver in the games. That put a huge pressure that Driver 3 needs to be a hit to succeed GTA 3 or live in its shadow. Driver wanted to focus more on the Driver segments, but it's easily seen how they copied some things from the GTA games like before. Once again, the possibility to get out of the car is here, and they included firearms. The game was released in 2004 on the PlayStation and Xbox, and later in 2005 for the PC. But after the critics tried the game, it seems like the game lost its identity. The driving still being enjoyable, but the game had some glitches and bugs. But the biggest problem was the dumb AI. The foot segments were also very clunky to control, and the shooting wasn't better than GTA 3. To be honest, it was downright awful, with a bad hit detection. I played the game a lot as a kid. Once again, I like to explore the cities and just cause mayhem and drive around. By the way, they included secret characters you could kill in Driver, what was reference to GTA character Tommy Wiseau, and even adding swimming balloons on his head as in Vice City you couldn't swim. After a few years, some of the guys on the project talked with the press, stating that they had pressure from Atari to push the driver out game before Rockstar released a new massive hit, San Andreas. Even worse, they got into some hot mess in regards to their review scores, where was found out that some of the critics were paid to give the driver a better score, what didn't look good at all. There was also once again a port for the Game Boy Advance, this time not so good received, good looking, but the game had some weird controls and bad combat. After Driver 3, the game studio wanted to give their fans a game that they deserved. They carefully analyzed their weak points and strengths and made their next title, Driver Parallel Lines, a game that was set in the 70s, dropping the whole story from the first 3 Driver games and focused now on TK the Kid. Now the whole game is set in the Big Apple, but in 2 time periods. First half in 1978 and second in 2006. After TK was doing some criminal activities, he was framed for 3 decades in prison for manslaughter, what was a good concept. The time change applied to the cars and the city was a cool novelty. Honestly, didn't play the mod range, but the 70s were fun. You got to gather cars and upgrade them, and it had a really good soundtrack. The problems from the older games, like the glitches and bugs, were polished. The fans were happy with this game, but honestly they were also with mixed opinions about the game. The biggest problem was everything was okay in the game, but everything that Driver did in Parallel Lines, GTA did better, making the new Driver game looking even more mediocre.
Thought these guys were supposed to be pros.
This was the point where Driver lost its identity completely. What made the whole thing even worse was that Atari at the time was going down. After so many years in business and accomplishing so much and acquiring so many studios, the giant crumbled on his knees and starting to selling some of its properties to Ubisoft. Today an industry giant, but at the time was just a game company on its rise. Buying the rights for Driver, despite the identity crisis, the game would be a foot into driving games for Ubisoft. The Driver got again 2 sequels for the small screens. The first game is a mobile port from Gameloft, Driver LA Undercover, again following Tanner in the City of Angels. The game was more or less a copy of the Gameloft Asphalt series, and it wasn't very well received. The second game was Driver 76 for the PlayStation Portable. The game was a prequel to the Driver Parallel Lines. It was praised for the storytelling and comic-like segments, but at the end of the day it was just a mediocre GTA clone, even despite the driving feeling better than ever. After Ubisoft cut his hands of the Driver license, they started to working on the next Driver game and brought a former desire from the Driver games until the third part, where he was pushed away from Atari. This time Ubisoft has given Martin Edmondson everything he needs to restore Driver name to its former glory.
One, he's a little older, a little more hard-bitten, and also his arch-enemy Jericho. And this sets us up for a relentless manhunt between these 2 historic, iconic characters.
And even Ubisoft stating they won't push the game out until it's fully ready, unlike Driver 3. Production started, and immediately at the start they wanted to address the problem they had over the years. One of the things that always felt off were the clunky on-foot segments in the PlayStation 1 era and later on. It was considered a novelty back in the day, but in the later games it looked like they wanted to imitate GTA. This time they used a method they called Google Eye. It was a possibility to roam on the streets like from a Google Street View. It took much effort to build such a mechanic, but it was very well received by the fans. In 2011 the game got released on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PC and Nintendo Wii. The game follows once again the original character from the older Driver games, John Tanner, but this time from a much different view. He got ability to switch his soul with other people to possess their bodies, what results that the foot segments weren't needed. What sounds crazy on paper but works like a charm in the game. The director mode was also back, being absent from the Driver Parallel Lines. The Nintendo Wii port was used to be a prequel to Driver 1 and followed Tanner in his rookie years. The Wii version lacked the shifting mechanics, but it was introduced with shooting and slow motion. The Nintendo Wii port wasn't also in HD. Overall the game didn't get good reviews from the critics. On the other hand, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox version were very well received, with critics commenting on the funny and good written dialogue.
In the body of a girl.
Man, finish your damn donut, then I'm taking you to a shrink.
I'm serious.
And for the first time you can also drive licensed cars, and even from a cockpit perspective. The whole game features some really good graphics for the time, what look even good today, and what was a praise how the game finally got separated from the GTA games. And with this entry, San Francisco once again become its own thing, and not being a shadow of GTA games. The game took rough 5 years to develop and got numerous changes through the years. In the end, the game costed a lot of money and it didn't sell so good, resulting in Reflections felt a bit disappointed. In the same year when Driver San Francisco was released, the two main teams that made other portable ports of Driver made again two ports. One for the mobile devices and the other one for the 3DS. Well, both being just crap. Overall, the critics commenting that the both game lacked any difficulty in depth and landed just short. Ubisoft stated in 2013 that they wanted to make another Driver game, but they ditched the idea to make Watch Dogs. Well, I'm not a Watch Dogs fan and I would rather to see a Driver sequel, but in 2014 they released again a mobile port on the iOS devices, called Driver Speedboat Paradise. Well, another crap mobile game. The game got bad critics and it was an attempt just to make a cash grab. It was a free-to-play game with in-app purchases. The best genre of games. The fans hated the game because it was just a generic boat racing with Driver name slapped onto it. After the team from Driver got a burnout on making Driver games, they slowly switched to a role of a support studio in Ubisoft, putting their ideas and skills into making games like The Crew, Watch Dogs, and some more. The boss of Reflections at that time talked about the place in the game industry, and I felt good as a support role in Ubisoft, what takes much pressure off them. They were also very happy they had the original IP that was overall well received over the years. When she got asked if there is any possibility that we get a new Driver game, she stated that Ubisoft didn't prevent them to make one, but at the moment they haven't any interest to reboot the franchise. Many of us have probably fond memories of Driver. Sadly, the prime year of Driver were the PlayStation 1 games. After those two sequels, it is easily saw how Driver 3 wasn't Driver anymore. Even if Driver Parallel Lines was a good game, it felt just like a GTA clone. And for the younger generation at that time it was just that and nothing more. But Reflections realized their mistakes over the years and improved on the last Driver game. But I want to think that Driver isn't a lost franchise. This was Driver, the rise and the downfall. Thanks for watching the RBG show. For more videos check out my channel, subscribe to the channel if you didn't, leave a like, stay safe and take care. See you in the next video.